Frequency Podcast Network. Stories that matter, podcasts that resonate.
A now closed amusement park, just a stone's throw from Niagara Falls, Canada, is now the site of an animal welfare crisis. 30 beluga whales are stuck there, and nobody knows how to help them. Marineland was once a favorite tourist attraction, its commercials playing regularly during the summer months in Ontario.
It's amazing shows and friendship grow. Everyone loves Marineland.
Once very much like SeaWorld in the United States, Marineland once played host to a wide variety of whale and animal shows. But it's now closed, with the whales trapped in dirty, decaying tanks. I'm Richard Southern, and today on The Big Story, the incredible plight of these 30 belugas, which has turned into literally a life or death story for them. We're pleased to be joined by Liam Casey. He's a journalist with the Canadian Press and has broken all sorts of aspects of this story. Liam, thanks for being here on The Big Story.
Thanks for having me, Richard.
We just played the commercial. It's iconic to those in Ontario, but for those who aren't familiar with Marineland, tell us a little bit about it and why, I guess, it's always been kind of controversial, right?
Yeah, so Marineland started back in 1961 when John Holler came over from Slovenia and started up a little sort of animal, kingdom that tourists can come and see. He had a seal back then and was able to kind of, train him and put on little shows. And he kept investing, kept buying up property in the area. The Marineland is about a kilometer from the famous Niagara Falls. So it's in prime tourist location. And over the years, they've expanded into a wide variety of animals and have added a whole bunch of rides and roller coasters. And but it has long had problems with dealing with its menagerie. And he started to really get into the whale business and dolphins, and had a lot of killer whales, dolphins,
Orcas at some point, too?
Yeah, they had a bunch of orcas, and all of them have died. Most of the whales are buried on the property there too, and they have been sort of the site of animal rights activist protests for decades.
And did the protests yield something? Because Marineland's been shut down now for more than a year, right?
Yeah, so the tide has kind of changed a bit on Marineland over the last probably 10 or so years as the country has gotten away from the idea of keeping marine mammals in captivity. And so it's kind of been a bit of a slow death for Marineland, accelerated a bit by the pandemic that, forced the closure of businesses across the country. It opened up kind of briefly after the pandemic, but hasn't really been the same since. And the owner, John Holler, died in 2018. His wife died last year, and that whole thing has kind of accelerated the idea of the family wanting to get out of the business, sell the land. It's about 1,000 acres in Niagara Falls there.
But there is one problem with that. There's something still on the land, something living.
Yeah, there's still 30 belugas there, 4 dolphins, I think a couple of seals and sea lions. There's a number of bears and several hundred deer. So they need to figure out what to do with the animals. They tried to get the 30 belugas. They wanted to sell them. They had a deal in place to send them to Chimelong Ocean Kingdom, which is a relatively new aquarium in China, and which has supposedly the world's biggest pool. And I think probably the only place that can handle taking such a large number of whales. The federal government stepped in and blocked that export, basically saying they don't want to send the animals to another country that has different laws than Canada. So Canada recently passed a law in 2019 that banned captivity, which grandfathered in the whales and dolphins at Marineland. It also banned breeding and banned performances of shows. So the federal government has an issue with sending it to China because they would be breeding them there again, and they would be performing for audiences. So they said it's not consistent with our laws, so we're not going to allow that permit. The problem is there's no option B at this point. In response to that permit being denied, Marineland sent a really wild letter to the federal government that said it is nearly broke. It's going to be out of cash in no time, unable to feed all their whales, and said if you don't give us millions of dollars within, I think it was 5 days, this was at the end of October, that they were threatening to kill all the belugas because they couldn't afford to feed them.
You broke that story.
Yeah.
How is it, though, that they're broke, Liam, when, as you say, they're sitting, this company or this family, on some very valuable real estate?
Well, I don't know. I don't have an entire vision of the financial picture there. They're sitting on a bunch of land that is absolutely valuable to someone. However, it's also very expensive to feed a bunch of belugas. I've been told it costs about $2 million a month to feed them. They haven't had any revenue coming in for more than a year, and they opened briefly last year for 2 months, and it was at a significantly reduced rate. So there's not much money coming in. It's an expensive operation to feed all these animals. But we don't have a clear picture of what they're sort of sitting on. They're going through the motions to try to get a few loans that can help them out in the meantime. But as of right now, the whales are still alive, as far as I know. We briefly scrummed Solicitor General Michael Kersner.
This is the Ontario Solicitor General. I mean, you cover Ontario politics, Liam, and there is, I think, the ability legally for the government of Ontario to, if they want, step in, because it's their jurisdiction to protect animals in the province, right?
Yeah, so it's Kersner's responsibility to look after the welfare of every single animal in the province, whether it's a pet or a farm animal or a beluga. And he has the power, or, the government has the power to seize animals if they want to. And they do it often in terms of, a dog cruelty case, or, some horses being mistreated. They can step in and actually physically take the animal. They can seize the animal here and essentially, take control and ownership of the animal.
But they're not going to do that, they say.
No. Solicitor General Kersner has kind of been hands off on the file. He's been very quiet about it. And when we do get a chance to talk to him, he just keeps saying it's not our jurisdiction and saying it's a federal problem.
But what would they do anyways if they seize them? They can't. There's nowhere to put them, as you say.
Yeah, I think seizing comes with a bunch of other issues. I guess it could guarantee their lives, though. It's unclear whether Marineland can euthanize its own whales that are otherwise healthy. I believe the law is written that they actually have that ability to do so. So if they were to seize the animals, I guess at minimum they would be able to keep them alive. But yeah, they have not wanted to do it, and there's no real place you could send 30 belugas anywhere in Ontario, let alone the rest of the country.
What about, there's some talk of something on the East Coast, some sort of animal sanctuary for whales that may be developed on Canada's East Coast?
Yeah, so there's this proposal down in Nova Scotia by an American company to launch what they're calling the Whale Sanctuary Project. And this would be an area in a bay in the ocean where they would put whales. They've kind of said they could take maybe 8 to 10 belugas in the amount of water that they have there. There's been some opposition from landowners who do not really want to see the whole bay kind of taken over for something like this. These are people who have access to their oceanfront properties, and they're against this. The province of Nova Scotia has recently kind of changed course on it, though, and they're opening up some crown lands to be able to develop it. So it looks like there's kind of some developments in this idea of this whale sanctuary after years of kind of nothing happening. So the people who are organizing the Whale Sanctuary Project are in the process of, trying to raise money. They say they need about $20 million to get this kind of underway. They seem pretty bullish on that. If everything goes their way, they'd be able to kind of start constructing this thing by next summer. there's still a whole cadre of approvals that the fisheries ministry, the federal fisheries ministry, would have to provide to go through with this. So there's still a long ways to go. So it's unclear to me if it's a real viable option for the Marineland whales to go there. The Solicitor General would like some of the whales to at least go there and some of the whales to go to China.
Moving these whales is no easy feat, obviously, right? Or cheap feat.
No, I know so Marineland moved 5 belugas to an aquarium in Connecticut 4 years ago. And I don't know how much that cost, but it would be very expensive. But yeah, they have these custom-made tanks. In that case, they came from Georgia Aquarium down in the United States, where they basically, they kind of fill these tanks with, enough water to kind of try to, create some buoyancy in the tanks for the animals, but not cover their blowhole. But this is a big operation. This require a crane, and a lot of whale trainers and people to help kind of just physically get the animal out of the water, kind of put it into this tank, which would be then put onto a truck, and they would get a police escort to the airport. So in 2021, they went to the Hamilton airport and they flew to Connecticut on one of those giant military Hercules type planes that can, carry tanks and such. So this is no small kind of operation.
In the meantime, Liam, these whales are stuck in limbo. You've done such great reporting on this, and I know you've talked to a lot of activists, some of whom are former employees of Marineland, some of whom I don't know if they've snuck in or they've used drones to check in on the whales. Like, while these whales wait to find out what's next, how are they doing?
So I understand that they're doing okay. The threat of the euthanasia freaked out a bunch of the workers. So I've been in touch with some, now former workers who are, still in touch with people who are working at Marineland. The situation was certainly tense there a few weeks ago. It's no small feat to euthanize a beluga, which they've had to do in recent years. There's been a number of beluga deaths over the years. I've calculated 19 belugas have died since 2019, which is a fairly large number.
Liam, you've gotten Ontario Premier Doug Ford going on this because you've been reporting on this for a while, and you've asked the Premier Ford about this repeatedly, and he's showing a heart for this, and he's showing some concern for the whale.
I feel sorry for these whales. You get 30 in what, 1 acre? And you're shoving all these poor whales in there? It's a very difficult situation. If we could find beautiful homes for them and if the federal government approves it, give them a beautiful, nice home.
As you know, Premier Ford is a self-styled animal lover. I believe that's true. But he also is in charge of, sort of animal welfare ultimately, which is a responsibility of the province. So on the one hand, his words, sound great. And he does legitimately seem concerned. However, we've sort of seen, 7 years of not much really happening. They keep saying that animal welfare inspectors, have been to the park. I think the latest is more than 220 times is what they told me. But these animals just keep dying. So I'm not really sure what's going on. The whole thing is opaque. It's really secret. It's hard to get information out of anybody.
It's troubling. What do you think is next, and how do you think this may end?
I think we're in a wait and sort of see period right now. We have kind of finger pointing between various levels of government of who's going to, take control. I don't think there's too many options left. Like the Chinese aquarium might be the most realistic option at this point. So, but the feds would have to kind of, they would have to overturn their decision and, which wouldn't maybe look too good in the public eye. So I'm not really sure how this ends, Richard. Like, one thing I've learned from Marineland is to sort of expect the unexpected. I never thought that they would threaten to kill 30 belugas. That was, kind of mind blowing. And I really don't know how this ends. It seems like we're back to a kind of a wait and see period right now. As far as I know, everything's moving along fine at Marineland. But at some point, somebody's going to have to do something. Like the conditions from what people are working there have told me are not great for the whales. There's a former whale trainer recently, came out publicly and told me, they need to get the whales out of Marineland. Even going to a place like China, sure, it may have different laws, but that it would be an upgrade on their current conditions. So I sort of see, I'm guessing that we might see whales move to maybe a few different places to try to help them out. It might be hard to get them all to go to one place if China is not an option, because I don't think there's anywhere else, frankly, big enough that can take that number of whales. But yeah, meantime, the whales are still there, and I'll still be kind of keeping an eye on them.
Keep up your great reporting on this, Liam. Keep on the government and keep on Marineland, and we'll look to you to see what's next here.
Thanks, Richard.
This is a story that's still evolving. Just earlier this week, Humane Canada, the National Federation of Humane Societies and Societies for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, launched a petition calling on the Ontario government to support the whales' relocation to sanctuaries. The petition has so far garnered more than 5,000 signatures. It's calling on the Ontario government to direct the provincial animal welfare services to immediately intervene and secure the whales' welfare and safety, as well as assemble an independent marine animal expert to assess the animal's health and improve conditions on the Marineland site. The petition also calling for the government to develop a humane long-term plan for the whales' relocation and well-being based on expert advice. That was Liam Casey joining us today, journalist of the Canadian Press, and that was The Big Story. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this conversation. You can find us on X at TheBigStoryFPN, or send us an email at hello@thebigstorypodcast.ca. You can get new episodes of The Big Story every morning, Monday through Friday, wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to leave a comment or share with a friend. I'm Richard Southern. Thanks for listening.